Good morning, PyCon. I hope... Welcome to day 2 and the lightning talks. My name is Hai Carell. I organize the San Francisco Python meetup along with Grace Law and Simeon Franklin. I'd like to tell you a couple jokes to warm you up this morning.
That's why I got him up here.
So a programmer goes to the store, and her husband asks her to get a loaf of bread, and if they have eggs, get a dozen. So he brings back a dozen loaves of bread. So in a nearby hotel here in Montreal, there's an engineer staying there, a physicist, and a mathematician. In the middle of the night, unfortunately, a fire breaks out. And the engineer wakes up, smells smoke, goes out in the hallway, sees the fire, looks around, sees a fire extinguisher. He grabs the fire extinguisher. He sees he can put out the fire with it. He sprays down the fire, puts out the fire. No problem. Goes back to bed. Then a little later in the night, the physicist, he wakes up, smells smoke, and goes out in the hallway, looks around, sees the fire, sees the fire extinguisher, calculates the humidity in the air, the barometric pressure, and the temperature, and he computes the exact amount of fluid to use to put out the fire, puts it out, goes back to bed. A bit later in the evening, the mathematician smells smoke, don't know why they didn't smell it the other times, sees the fire extinguisher, goes, aha, a solution exists, and goes back to bed. So thank you for coming out this morning. I hope you won't go back to bed. We're really excited to have these talks. I'd like to just call out all our lightning speakers to start with. We also have a couple backups, but we hope everyone's here. Eric Rose, Jiwan Sao, Jess Frazier, Eyal Ruveni, Alec Monroe, and Simon Willison. So please come up towards the front and speak to Lynn or I when you get a chance. I'd like to announce that we have Jess Frazier on deck. We have Jiwan Sao setting up, and I'd like to introduce our first lightning speaker of the morning, Eric Rose, who will be speaking to us about deployment for the lazy and paranoid.
Thank you very much. Thanks for getting up so early. So if you care about security, deploying Python dependencies has always been a pain in the neck. You could just pip install, but then, of course, PyPy, the package index, it lets authors change their packages without revving their version numbers. They could change it behind your back. That's actually bitten me in production 3 different times. Also, if PyPy gets owned, for example, your host, someone could put malicious code up there. And while PyPy recently got a spiffy caching CDN from Fastly that lets us be a lot more reliable and quicker, what if the CDN gets owned? That's more attack surface, right? So, what do you do? Well, in the past, you could run a local package index, keep that server up, maintain ACLs controlling who gets to upload, or, since that's a pain, you could just check everything into version control, have a big vendor branch. Then it's a pain to upgrade. You gotta remove and get add or whatever you're using. Sometimes you write tooling on top of that, and then you gotta maintain the tooling. I didn't like that, so I wrote a little tool called Peep that fixes all that. It's a wrapper around pip that lets you enjoy PyPy's CDN goodness while still staying secure. It does this by comparing the downloaded archives against local hashes that you just stick in the requirements file. Here's how to convert your project to Peep. You pip install Peep so you have the tool available. Then you use Peep install, to install your requirements. Now the first time through, you'll see that it fails. There's an error message down there that says, hey, you didn't put hashes in the requirements file. So let's just drag those hashes over to the requirements file. There we go. We'll save that. Then we'll Peep install again. And this time it'll work. It's actually comparing the archive hashes against those hashes in the requirements file. Fantastic. Now this is the very important, it's not done yet. All we did is prove repeatability. we still have no idea if that stuff is secure or trustworthy in any way. So this is the point where you stop and you vet your packages. Make sure the stuff that got into your site packages directory is as you want it to be. Then and only then are you finished. And let's see where I left off here. Then let's go ahead and clear out this virtual env, pretend it's a whole fresh deployment. We'll uninstall everything. You notice I'm using pip uninstall because other commands just fall right through to pip. In case you have a shell script that's using a variable $pip or something, you can just sub pip right in there and it's a single change. And we install the stuff. And yes, because you can see over in the hash file, we've changed one of the hashes to be wrong. And we get this scary, scary error where the following packages didn't match the hashes specified, and this is when you should freak out and say, am I owned? What's going on here? Did I screw up a hash? Maybe it's an architecture-specific package and has more than one valid hash, which you can just add more than one in the requirements file and you'll be fine. Fix the hash, and everything is good. And of course, everything we added to the requirements file is a comment, so it's all backward compatible with pip. We have full Python 3 support. We support wheels just fine. And best of all, pip is embeddable. So if you don't want to pip install pip and start your trust chain with something untrustworthy, pip is just one file. Just copy it into your source control and trust it the same way that you trust your own source code. Common question people ask me, why don't you just stick this in pip? Well, we'll be working on that on Monday. We'll see how far we get. No promises, don't hold your breath. It'll take a while, hung up in bike shedding, you know how things get. But in the meantime, you can use pip and enjoy security and peace of mind. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Eric. Now I have Juan Sao from Stanford talking about PySocialite.
Hi, I'm Juan. I'm a PhD student at Stanford Mobile Social Research Group in computer science. I'd like to introduce a very cool project from my research group. It's called Socialite, a Python integrated query language for big data analysis. So in Socialite, you can easily create distributed in-memory tables and apply high-level queries that are easier than SQL and apply, for example, relational operations such as selection and join operation. And those high-level queries are compiled to very optimized parallel and distributed code that is faster than Hadoop, 1,000 times faster than Hadoop. Let me give you an example. This declares a foo table named foo having 2 int column. And an example of this foo table would be something like this, where we have 3 tuples. This other statement creates a bar table which is distributed with this added angular bracket, and the table is horizontally partitioned with respect to the value of this first column. An example of this bar table would be something like this. If we have 2 machines, the bar table is partitioned into 2 and stored across the machines. So once you declare tables like that, you can use queries like this to go over the tuples in the bar table and select the tuples whose last column value is 42 and insert the tuples into foo table, but only first 2 columns. Or in this other example, after you do the selection from the bar table, you go over the tuples in the quarks table and select the tuples whose first column value is equivalent to the second column value of the selected tuples from the bar table. And you insert the tuples into the foo table. But the best part is Python integration. So if you haven't been listening, this is the right time to invest your 20 seconds. So look at the screen, please. When I say Python integration, I mean this level of integration where you can freely intermingle Python code and Socialite query. So what's in black font is Python code, and what's in red is Socialite query. So you first print a sentence in Python code, and you declare Socialite table, and insert a single tuple into the table in Socialite query. And then you go over the tuples in the Socialite table in Python for loop like that. Okay? If you're interested in Socialite, or if you're interested in big data analysis in Python in general, we have an open space today at 3 p.m., room 522A, where we'll be discussing data analysis in Python, but also I'll be introducing socialite in detail. So please come to the open space session today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Juan. So we have Alec Monroe on deck, Eyal setting up, and please join me in welcoming Jess Frazier, who's going to be speaking to us about Starting Simply, the Gamify Health project.
All right, thanks everyone. So today's going to be a bit of a different flavor from some of the talks, the lightning talks you've heard. It's going to be mostly non-technical, more about the process rather than the code of Starting Simply. So a quick note about me. My name is Jess Frazier. I am, for those of you who detected an accent, I'm actually originally from Australia, but currently living in Austin, Texas. Very involved in the Texas Austin PyLadies group there. It's a lot of fun. So let's get stuck into it. So really talking about the basics here, and what I'm advocating today is there are all these amazing tools, libraries that you can use with Python, and chances are you haven't learned them all yet, but you don't have to wait necessarily until you've learned the new thing to get started with a project you want to work on or a problem that you want to solve. So start with what you know. And the example I'm going to show today is, as was mentioned, the project for gamifying health. So as I said, focusing today on the process rather than the code. If anyone wants to talk to me about the code, feel free to reach out to me afterwards. Happy to talk to anyone about this. So where I kind of started from with this project is I wanted to make health my number one priority, but that wasn't really happening in reality. iPad games were my number one priority in actuality, in terms of where my time was being spent. So too much time on games, not enough necessarily on the health. So I really wanted to refocus that energy that I was pouring into my iPad to try and kind of focus that on things that would actually, yield me long-term benefits and more energy, happier, healthier. So one thing I want to do is kind of make it a bit more of a win scenario, because when you think about health stuff, you don't tend to think about, yay, I got a good night's sleep, pat on the back. It's, oh, I didn't get enough sleep, or, oh, I shouldn't have eaten that. So kind of refocus that. And so wanted to try have a go at gamifying health objectives. So for those of you that don't know, quick definition of gamification, it's the use of game thinking and game mechanics in non-game context in order to engage users and solve problems. So there are plenty of real-world examples of this. One obvious one is Foursquare. You get your, go to the places, you can engage in the behavior, you get your badges, that type of thing. So it's really about motivating behavior. And for this project, I really wanted to focus on behavior rather than outcomes. If you get the right behavior, you'll get the right outcomes eventually. At least that's the idea. So the premise that I had was I wanted to record instances of healthy behaviors, translate those behaviors into point that I could quantify as achievements, and then periodically cash in those points for personalized rewards. So pretty basic premise, but my vision was somewhat different. It was a little bit shiny and a little bit beyond my capabilities, involving things like a highly interactive web application, user-friendly syncing with other systems and applications such as Fitbit and a FitnessPal, complex analytics, scraping images from retail sites to provide that additional motivation, and so on and so forth. I am a relative beginner to Python, so a lot of these skill sets I don't currently have, but I really wanted to get started now. I had an immediate need for this application, so I didn't want to wait. So I made the decision to get started simply using what I know, which is dictionaries, lists, and classes. Go ahead and get started with what I could, which was the basic engine of the application, how these translations would occur, and worry about the rest later, the shiny stuff, the analytics, etc. So I started by defining the algorithms relating to healthy behaviors, and I decided to focus my energies on the holy trinity of health: food, exercise, and sleep, and have behavioral instances recorded by day to simplify that. So a perfect score would be 1, and have equal weighted scores of food, exercise, and sleep. So whatever my food target is, for instance, have my target set for a balanced diet. If I hit that target, it would be a 1. If I fell short of that target, it would be, a percentage of 1, etc. So that's kind of how I calculated that, and keep a running total of my health points over time. So with food, it had to treat it a bit differently than exercise or sleep. Exercise or sleep, you did it or you didn't. With food, it's a little bit different. Sort of, okay, I could eat all the healthy food, and then the unhealthy food, I couldn't necessarily get a 1 for that day. So I had to put in a bit of a syntax around that, the algorithm there. So I also went ahead and defined the algorithm for rewards based on time and money. So I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to skip through this. So basically, depending on whether it was time or money or both, had a matrix on that describing the magnitude of the reward, and related that to the actual activity. So make sure it made sense. So basically, I did it very, very simply. The result was very hideous but very functional code, and basically I would really encourage people that have things that they want us to, problems they want to solve, don't wait, start now. Here is an example of a mechanical way to get started easily. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Awesome Pie Lady from Austin, Texas. Thank you. Did anyone go to the Eventbrite event last night? Yeah? Well, you can blame the next person up for losing all your money. We have Eyal from Eventbrite talking about how we sped up Eventbrite by 50 milliseconds with 1 line.
Hey, how's it going? My name is Eyal. I'm a software engineer in Eventbrite. Integrity engineering, I guess I work on spam and fraud problems. So I'll just give a quick blurb about a 1-line change that sped up our website by a lot. So we use Django at Eventbrite. And since Django uses regular expressions, it's kind of relevant to how the URL resolving works. So if you look at the regular expression library, it actually happens to compile your code by default when you're doing a match or anything of that sort. So this is pretty handy. So what happens with this compiled code is that it's actually stored in a cache. So let's see how big that cache is. And it is set to 100. That is absolutely wonderful. So let's check out over here. Let's run some code. OK? So let's quickly add in some utilities before we take actually a dive into the URL resolving. So just a short little timer context manager that I've written here. It works like a charm. All right. So Django has this resolve method that it uses to figure out which which views to go to based on the URL. So let's see what happens when we use it. So the first time we're going to use it, it's going to take a while because Eventbrite has a bunch of URLs. So took a little while. But now the second time, it's going to go real fast. Yeah, that was good. OK, and then let's try a different URL. So this one's my tickets. Let's see what happens here. OK, cool. This is pretty good, too. So the regular expression library happens to store the caches here. And if you look, the regular expression cache is at 70, which is less than 100, so that's great. But turns out we have a lot of URLs. So that's not so many. So let's see what happens when we try something that's not there. So I've declared this little tried list here. And that one clearly didn't work. So that is 658 URLs that we're trying if we're getting some kind of failure. So what does that mean for us? Well, that means it's really, really slow. So let's see what the regular expression module does in the case that it can't find something. So if you go down here, and if we exceed the max cache, it is simply cleared. And so everything just goes away. So what did we do? We added this little blurb here that just did this. And all of a sudden, this happened. So you guys should do this too. Thanks.
Thank you, Eyal. So we have Simon Willison setting up over here, and I'd like to introduce Alec Monroe, who will be speaking to us about software gardening culture.
I don't know if I need to wait for that to reset. Probably not. Yeah, my name's Alec Monroe, and when I say software gardening culture, it's how software culture is influenced by the idea of software gardening, not gardening software or anything like that. So yeah, I'm the director of developer productivity at SFX Entertainment. Still figuring out exactly what that means, but that's what they call it at Twitter, and they're doing pretty good. There is another Alexander Monroe somewhere here. I don't know who he is or what he does, but I'm sure he's cool too. SFX Entertainment, the part that I'm part of used to be ARC90, known for readability, and very briefly, Kenneth Rietz. Last year, we were acquired by SFX Entertainment, the largest events or electronic music events company in the world. So now we are building very cool stuff in that space. And if you're interested in that space, you should come talk to us. So I'm just going to briefly introduce the idea of software gardening because that's not the core focus. The idea is that software development doesn't actually have that much in common with engineering, especially with modern software projects that are incredibly complex and interdependent. It's much more like curating a living thing than it is manufacturing a product. I'm sure most of you have had some experience with this. So there's been a lot of interesting writing on this idea. Go out and check it out. I'm more interested in this talk about thinking about how that affects how we approach a particular project and how our careers evolve, what we think about kind of as software developers, what that means. So let's talk about what goes into a project first. For a given software project, there are obvious things like the requirements, what it's supposed to do, who's going to work on it, where it's supposed to run, how long it's supposed to take. This is stuff that's dictated up front, but is not enough to give you any idea what it's going to look like. So there are other things that go into it. And one idea I'm taking from the plant world is this idea of mycorrhizal networks, which are fungal layers within the soil which digest the byproducts of everything else that's happening and then redistribute them as kind of raw nutrients needed to begin new growth. I think we have something similar going on in the code snippets and software project structure conventions that we bring to projects that certainly are not going to be in the requirements, but we're going to end up inserting them as we go because we've absorbed them, we've used them before, we're familiar with them, and they're this kind of concrete thing we can bring to build new products. So I really like that idea of mycorrhizal networks. I think I'm probably butchering it if there's any mycologists in the room, but you should read more about it. Pollinators, I think in the plant world, people are more familiar with that. And I think we have a very similar thing going on with open and shared source communities, where the best traits from a given project are taken from that project by the developers who worked on it and brought to the other things they work on. And these days, you can't avoid that. There's no project you can work on where you're not going to take pieces of it with you out into the wider world, and you're not going to be influenced by what's happening in the wider world in terms of how you build your project. And I think this is great. There's some super awesome things about it. The The way that happens, though, is interesting because it happens through you as individuals. Working with these projects changes you. It changes the conversations you have with other developers. It changes how you approach other problems. In Soviet Russia, anywhere I go, I bring a piece of the Python community with me. I bring a piece of the Zope community with me. I'm inspired to be part of those and see what the people who were part of those are doing in the world and how they are shaping it. Okay, I'm a little behind on time, so this will be quick. So, the core takeaway from this is that as a software developer, there's no problem domain that is permanently solved. Everything that's happening out there that's awesome, you can take what's happening out there and build something else that's awesome with it. Okay, 4 seconds. So yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Alec. We had a slight technical problem on our last talk, so I'd like to make a call out here that whenever the keynote people are ready to get started, please come up here and do that. Until then, I apologize. You're stuck with me, but I'm prepared. So I could tell you a TCP joke, but I'm not sure you'd get it. Oh, sorry, but... Oh, sorry. Okay. I could tell you the TCP joke. I could tell you a TCP joke, but I'd have to keep telling it to you until you got it. We could move down a layer, a protocol, and go down to an IP joke. It's all in the delivery. So let's go on to what's the difference between a data scientist and a statistician? Basically, a data scientist, as he said, a data scientist maybe works in Silicon Valley. Okay, so a data scientist, a front-end developer, and a back-end developer are hunting deer. They're suddenly, out of nowhere, a bear charges at them. The front-end developer raises her rifle and fires at it. It's 5 feet in front of it. The back-end developer raises his rifle and fires at the bear 5 feet behind it. The data scientist whips out a notebook, scribbles some calculations, and says, "We hit it." Oh, sure. I'd like to announce that our sign up for Lightning Talks is out by the registration desk. Please sign up. No need to run now. Sign up anytime before 2 p.m. today. We'll review those later, and we'll get announcements out to the accepted talks by around 4 p.m. today for the ones this evening and tomorrow morning. We'll have another sign up process tomorrow. Well, we have the PyLadies auction tonight. Any other announcements? Okay, well, anyways, welcome to your second day of PyCon, or second full day of talks. And, okay, and you're stuck with me just a tiny bit longer. I'm sure I have something else here. So, what does the B in Benoit B. Mandelbrot stand for? Benoit B. Mandelbrot. Okay, so I wanted to talk to you about a concern I have here in Montreal. There is the Olympic Park, and it's beautiful, and it has this beautiful botanical garden and a zoo, and you just should definitely check it out. But in this botanical garden, they have something very dangerous. They have this butterfly display, okay? And it's a room you walk through, and butterflies are flying all around. Well, so I was learning, Mandelbrot, chaos theory, simple equations that have complex outcomes. I was learning that a butterfly flapping its wings in the Amazon could, lead to a blizzard here in Montreal. So they have all these butterflies there. I just think they need better regulation. I'm all done.